Most of you, yes. All right, good morning, everybody. This is Alex Pataki. We're at the North Suburban Chicago Tableau user group meeting. We've got 46 participants at the moment. It's 9:02, so we're actually going to go ahead and get started. If anyone's running 3 or 4 minutes late, all they're going to miss is me talking, and that won't be the worst thing in the world. So there we go. Just for everybody, this is our very first virtual user group meeting for the North Suburban Chicago Tableau user group. So hopefully this all goes smoothly. And if there's anything you'd like to see us do differently in the future, if we have any more virtual ones, please let us know. You can send me an email. I'm on LinkedIn. I can give you my email address as well. You can put things in the chat. If you've got questions during the meeting for any of the panelists, right, or any kind of questions, put them in the Q&A. There's a Q&A section, and then I will be monitoring the Q&A while all the presenters are talking. And then at the end of each segment, they're going to stop for questions, and then we'll answer what we can in the meeting live, and then anything else we can follow up afterwards. All right. So with that, we're going to jump right in. This is our Q2 meeting. We had a great one in Q1. We had lots of participants. We had lots of attendees. And it was fabulous, and it was in person. So this one's a little different. If we look at our agenda, I had copied the agenda from the last month and adjusted, and I did leave the registration and breakfast section on just to add the comment that that section is now sponsored by your own kitchen. Someone suggested that I should have put maybe some pictures of Pop-Tarts up here because that's what their kids were eating this morning. I don't know what you're eating this morning. I know whatever I'm eating is probably not what I should be, but there we go. All right, so this is what we're going to have today. So I'm just doing a couple welcome remarks and kickoff here, and then we're going to go right into Jeff Somerville of Tableau. He's going to do a what's new with Tableau since TC19. And then we're going to get a great tips and charts session from Zen Master Jeff Schaefer, which is great. And then we're going to have our Spring Viz Challenge. We're going to have our winner for this meeting present her Viz, and then we'll let her present, demo it, explain it. Maybe we'll have some comments by a couple of our expert panelists, and then we're going to wrap it up. And then that'll be the meeting for today. So thank you, everybody. Let's see really quickly where we are. Where can you find us? You can find us on LinkedIn via the name right at the top, right? North Suburban Chicago Tableau User Group, very long and lengthy name. We also have the community link, right? So if we go to Tableau, see if we can click there and go there straight there. They've got a community link as well, right there. Also in the user group site. Right, if you go to usergroups.tableau.com, you can find us there too. This was the meeting invite for this particular meeting, but if you were just to go to usergroups@tableau.com, you'd be able to find us here too, right? So we can go, search through this and you'll find us. You can also find whatever local one might be more appropriate as well for some of the people. But there's plenty of ways to find us. Now, who am I? Just really quickly, you didn't come here to hear me talk, but it says Tableau Cert in process. That is true. Master's in data science also in process. I have another master's in computer science and a BA in math and another one in music. See, Jeff's got a lot of music stuff up in his little dojo there, which is awesome. So I'm right there with you. Yeah, I've been running a global analytic and BI platforms for about 20 years, and now I'm leading up some IoT analytics and manufacturing analytics at Baxter. So that's what I do. I help run the user group, right, along with a number of other people on that leadership team. And I am your host for today. I will be watching the Q&A session. We put this up last quarter, and we actually didn't get any suggestions. I am still open to that. Otherwise, you're going to be stuck with whatever a non-graphic designer like me will come up with. But it would be great if we had a logo for our user group. You could see some really cool ones. I like this one in the middle for New Orleans, right? They've got the Saints kind of logo embedded in there, which is awesome. The London Tug, that one's pretty cool looking. right? And some of these other ones. I like this little Loch Ness Monster one. I don't know if that's for Ireland or not, but I like it. And you could see some of these other ones as well. Um, we're North Suburban Chicago, so there is also a Chicago Tableau user group. So I don't know how we would want to differentiate ourselves. I don't think a, um, a minivan and and a couple soccer balls is really the Suburban logo we really want to go for, but we'll come up with something. Um, with that, that's enough of the intro. Again, logos, how to find us, right? And let's jump into our next speaker here. So Jeff Somerville, if we can pass you the ball, then we'll let you go.
Yeah, thank you, Alex.
Yep.
Let's see here. For some reason, WebEx has decided not to let me see my mouse on WebEx. So let's see if we can.
Just passed you the ball, Jeff.
I'm flying blind on WebEx. So I want to make sure that you guys can see my screen.
Yep, and can see your mouse too.
Yep.
Awesome. Well, yeah, interestingly enough, except for on the pure WebEx screens, we can run with the mouse. So, hey everyone, Jeff Somerville here. I am a solutions engineer based out of the Indianapolis area. I actually work within our healthcare and life sciences vertical. So, Alex and Baxter is actually one of my clients that I support. But just wanted to start out. We're gonna actually go through a super deep dive of 2020.2 today, and go through all of the amazing new features that came out with this release. Came out a couple of weeks ago, and really, some of the stuff that's in here is going to fundamentally change, or we believe it's going to fundamentally change the way that folks use Tableau. It's pretty much our most exciting release since we released Hyper back in 2018, or actually before 2018, 2017 in 10.5. The only difference is this one is actually for a lot of the changes here are actually for the designers themselves. So first off, I want to thank you guys. We would not be the company that we are without the enthusiastic support that we receive from folks like you, our user community, and it means a lot. It's really important to Tableau and to Salesforce, for that matter, with all the users that are out there coming to meetings like the North Chicago Suburb Tableau User Group. So thank you very much for giving us some time today. What we're going to cover in the next 30-35 minutes is a deeper dive into visual analytics. Then we're going to jump into some web and mobile stuff, talk a little IT governance, just in case there's some folks from IT in the audience, and then talk a little bit about prep. So let's jump into visual analytics. And I think anybody who's very familiar with Tableau can see from this picture just behind the visual analytics slide deck that something has changed, the way that the line's drawn. And what that something is called relationships. So what we've done is we've created a new way of combining data in the data pane that's going to allow you to combine tables in a more simple process. It's going to become more intuitive and help promote your analytic experience. And it's actually going to very much streamline the way that you have to manage data sources and prepare them for analytics. So what do we mean? Well, relationships, in short, we're making it easier to perform analysis across multiple tables of data. And so how are we doing it? Well, historically, you have always had to bring in, if you're going to bring in multiple tables into a data source, You would bring them in. You would figure out what the primary keys and foreign keys are of those tables. And then you decide what kind of join you're going to join them off of. An inner join, a left join, a right join, an outer join. And essentially, as soon as you chose what that join was, you've already made a decision about what level of analysis that you can do between those data sources. What we've moved to now is that the combining of what's going to be joined and what you see is happening simultaneously as you interact with Tableau within a worksheet and you're building out a visualization. So relationships are flexible, automatic, and contextual. What we mean about flexible is what you're going to see is that there's a whole lot more that you can do with relationships because you don't have to bind them early to a data set to another data set. There's now this logical layer of information above the physical joins. It's automatic. When you drag a new data set onto a screen, Tableau is going to automatically tell you, hey, I think these are the two fields to join or that are related, and you don't define a join. It just happens automatically. And contextual meaning Tableau is now smart about when it's gonna decide to join the data based on how you interact with it. What's this mean to use the customer? Less upfront data prep. It's going to allow you to see and understand your data in new ways that you've never been able to see before and analyze it. And it's also going to help you with a greater amount of trust that what you're doing in Tableau is right. So joining tables produces a table. So when we join table A here and table B, it actually creates table C. And then what we do when we do an analysis is we do a summation of that new table. With relationships, you don't define the join. Again, it happens simultaneously. So basically, it's as if your table has wings. It can fly in whatever direction that it needs to. And so to help understand that a little bit better is it's now becomes level of detail aware. And I have a perfect example to show you here in a moment. It summarizes both table A and table B. So it understands what the level of granularity is or the level of detail for each of those tables are. So that when you join or ask for Tableau to display some information from each of those tables, it makes the join and can actually show you the unmatched values. It creates a relationship to show you all types. It can do an inner join on the fly, a right outer join, right inner join, a left inner join, or it can do a complete outer. It all depends on what you're asking Tableau to do, and Tableau is aware of what it's doing. So let's jump in and show you what I mean. So what we're looking at here is a data set that is looking at the population of London. And what we see here is that the current population of London is just shy of 9 million. If I jump over into this data source, what I can see is that I have my London population, and here's my table. Well, the old way of doing things in 2020.1 or before is I would drag in, let's say I want to look at crime data across London. I would drag this in, and Tableau is going to right away look and find what the link is between these two tables, and then you have to actually define what join you're going to make. So in this case, we're going to keep it as an inner join between these two tables. And what I can immediately see is that my population is duplicative across these data sources because crimes are actually reported. There's multiple crimes that are getting reported for a given metropolitan area. And subsequently, if I go back to my worksheet, suddenly my population has exploded It's now showing that London has almost 170 million people in it. Wow, that would be quite a bit from going from 8.8, but it's wrong. Well, in order to account for this, in the old way of doing things, you would have to write a level of detail to appropriately summarize the population from your London population table if you're going to be using information from the crimes table. In fact, these are already joined. The table already exists. Well, let's look at how this would work in relationships. So I'm going to come down and go into the data source pane. And what I'm going to do, I already have my London population drawn up. Now I'm going to join it to crimes. And what you'll notice is that something very different is happening. We have these wonderful things that at Tableau we call noodles. And a noodle is being formed, i.e. a relationship between the London population and the crime table. And again, Tableau is recognizing that the LOSA code is what creates the relationship between the two tables. However, notice that it's not joining these two tables on the fly. Rather, it's not going to join the tables until I ask it to. So now, if I click on my London population, and the other thing I'll point out too, with relationships in 2020.2, when you have multiple tables, there's no longer a separation between what are my dimensions and my measures across an entire set of data. It's actually defined at the data source level. So now if I drag in my population, oops, let's just bring it in as a label. What I can see here is that I have my number, my 8.8 million. But what if I wanted to bring in crime type? And I'm going to bring crime type into rows, and I'm going to just fix the entire view and make this a bar chart and organize it. Something interesting is going on here. And if I display the ends, well, we know it's 8.8 million. But here what I'm seeing is that my types of crime are at 7.7 million for violence and sexual offenses. Antisocial behavior, 7 points. If I add all of these up, it does not equal 8.8 million. In fact, it would sum far more than that. However, with relationships, if I come down to my totals and I add my show column grand total, what you can see is we're still getting that 8.8 million population. So what's going on here? What's going on here is because of the way that relationships work, I'm able to show you across the entire data set and across my population of 8.8 million people, 7.7 million of the population are affected by violence and sexual offenses. 4.9 are affected by criminal damage and arson. To the contrary, if I come back to my old way of doing things, and if I were to do that same thing and add my crime type and make this a bar graph, show you it's exploded. Even at the lowest level of granularity of bringing this in, because of the way that the tables are joined as an inner join, the numbers are wrong. So I hope you can see that that's how powerful relationships are. Let's go in and do one more example. So here, let me show you first. I have a data set that is now looking at creating a star schema based off of area, which is a multi-fact table. And the area is related to these 4 different tables. However, if I wanted to do an analysis of house sales and crimes, these 2 tables do not have any relationship independent, just the 2 of them. However, they are related through the areas fact table. And because of that, we can now do some analysis of house sales and crimes that before what we would have had to do is gone into Tableau Prep or some other tool, done some pre-aggregated work to answer some very specific questions, the known knowns about house sales and crimes. And let me show you what that would look like. Here, what we're looking at are pre-aggregated data set, the old way of doing things, and then a new data set that's simply using that star schema and the relationships. And what I see here when I select in Westminster, which by the way, what it looks like is that the higher the average house price, the more crime. And so when I look at this data point and I look at the detail, I have a single row of data, which I would expect for summary. However, for the full data set, I also have a single row of data. Again, because in order to create this, I had to do a pre-aggregation so that I could actually display the information correctly in my visualization. Coming over to the new way, using relationships, where there's automatic aggregation. When I select Westminster, I'm able to go in and look at my underlying data. And again, for the summary, I have a single row of data. However, now notice that there's the 3 different tables that are used in order to generate this visualization. And now I'm able to go into my crimes table and see all of the different crimes that occurred to actually create that graph. And I can also see all the individual home sales in Westminster, which now allows me to do so much more with my data without doing any extra pre-aggregation, just actually creating the right set of relationships. I can start asking questions like, for antisocial behavior crimes in household types that are just flats. Notice over here, there is no ability to do any type of deeper dive because the data does not exist. So let's jump back. Moving on from relationships, let's talk about sets a little bit. And I did say sets with a T on the end. In 2018.3, we introduced the concept of set actions. Now, if anybody on the phone is not aware of set actions yet, please go ahead and look it up because it's a really powerful way of doing analytics, especially of driving interactivity. Set actions and parameter actions were the 2 biggest things that were released in late 2018 and in 2019 from my perspective of how it changed the way that we can do visualization. And in 2020.1, we're taking it a step further. We're actually adding the ability to dynamically change memberships of a set with a filter-like interface. So just like you go in and right-click on a dimension or a measure and say show filter, you can now do show set, and we'll show you here in a second. The other point that I'll make is that if you've ever created a set from a dimension, it now automatically refreshes with the data. So Tableau intuitively updates your information and makes sure that not only the dimensions and measures are refreshed and the most accurate, most current data, but also all of your sets. We've also done some set action improvements. Rather than just be able to hit select for your set action or unhover for your set action, you can now implement add and remove buttons or menu prompts for your sets. And so let's jump over and look at that. So the first way that set actions used to work was that if I clicked on a set action, then I would automatically see that data and see where phones are in and out of my profit, my sales quantity, and number of records. I could also go and highlight a whole section and see a subset. But what if I want to add appliances to that? Well, if I just simply click on appliances, because it's a select, everything else goes away. Now before, you certainly could hold down the control key and click on appliances, but you have to remember, you have to know that that interactivity or functionality exists. So that's the old way of doing stuff in 2020.1 and before. With set action improvements, what I can now do is instead of having my sets update by what I'm selecting, I can now select something and then be prompted to add to set or remove to set. So now I can go over to appliances and notice that I selected it and nothing happened. The set wasn't updated, except for now that I've selected it, I can choose to add it. And what if I now want to remove chairs? I can come over here and click remove. So you have additional flexibility in how you want to drive the interactivity of your set actions on your dashboards. And finally, here's an example of what the set control looks like. And notice here, as I'm clicking on things, it's not changing because it's not being driven by a set action any longer. It's now being driven by perhaps a more recognizable, a more usable interface that people, not more usable, but something that people are more used to, which is a filter. So if I want to bring everything into the set, I can, and I can start taking things away just to see what the effect is. Or I can unselect all and I can build it out from using a menu. And just to show you how easy it is, let me go into that worksheet. I'm going to remove this card. All it is now is I come to my set, I right click on it, and I say show set. And in addition to being able to show the set, you also have the same flexibility as you would with a filter of changing what the values are and how it looks on the screen. So that's sets. Let's come back to now. We've also done some improvements with some geospatial connections. We've introduced an Esri web data connector. I'm not sure if anybody on the call, this is the hardest part about being remote, is I can't see a show of hands of the people who are actually using Esri today. But prior to 2020.2, if you wanted to use an Esri data source into Tableau, you would have to export it out into a JSON file or some file that then Tableau could connect to. Now you can actually just use your Esri ArcGIS server endpoint, and the data automatically is brought into Tableau. In addition, we've also introduced the ability to use Oracle spatial data. Now I know back in 2018, late 2018, we introduced the ability to use spatial data with SQL Server. Well, now we have parity with Oracle as well. So any spatial data that is stored in the columns inside of Oracle, when you connect that data and bring it into Tableau, Tableau will automatically recognize those collections and be able to show you or display that information geospatially. And just to show you, for example, this is an Esri worksheet that we've created that's using collections directly from Esri to bring in and build out this visualization. And I'll show you real quick how easy it was. If I come into my data source, or maybe it won't be real quick, but we'll still go over to it. What you can see here is if I go data, new data source, when I go to my Esri ArcGIS server, I'm simply prompted to put in an endpoint. And that endpoint in this case is this particular endpoint. And what you'll notice is now I'm connected to the entire Esri server. Moving on, we've made some improvements to explain data. So it used to be when you would select a mark and ask explain data to show you information, explain data would go through in the entire data set and any correlations that it found that it thought might help you in explaining it, it displayed it. And you know what, from time to time, there were some things that weren't very sensical that it showed, or there were some things that were very obvious. And I'll show you what I mean here in a second. The other thing that we've been able to do is instead of only showing one extreme data at a time, explain data now surfaces multiple extreme values. Let's go look. Here we're looking at the ride month and the distance that was traveled by month. And what I can tell is that August is definitely an outlier here. And so when I go and ask Tableau to explain this, explain data goes and does an analysis, and it comes up and it tells me that weather conditions had a part with this. Now this isn't new to 2020.2. I believe it came out in 2019.4, but now I'm able to resize my explain data window so that I can actually see things a little bit better. The first release of explain data, it was in a fixed window. So I see that there's overcast skies, and that makes sense. And now I can show you the multiple extreme values that are making that up. Now, again, like the way explain data has always worked, if I would like to add this to my analysis, I simply click on this button and a worksheet was created. But let's say there's certain things that are coming up in my analysis that I don't necessarily want. Now, as the author, I can edit which fields are going to be analyzed against this data. So for instance, ETL process ID should have nothing to do with my data. That's just something that's in there to help me know where the data came from and track it. But let's also consider, let's say weather didn't make sense. So if I uncheck weather and I click OK, what you'll see is the analysis completely changes. And when you publish it, this is stored so that the interactivity that your users are going to experience, they'll be able to understand only things that make more sense or are more sensical. And if I want to bring weather back in, I simply check it, click OK. The analysis is done again. We've made some improvements to Ask Data. So we continue to leverage our natural language processing capabilities. And we're trying to make it more and more powerful and also more and more reusable. So we've added the ability to create custom suggestions and then also save those as data roles. We've added the ability to support scripted data sources. And we've also improved the enterprise controls. So let's go jump into Ask Data real quick. So very familiar data set, the sample superstore. And here, for anybody who's never seen Ask Data, if I look at total revenue by, let's say, state, I can go in, and what Tableau does is it not only understands that I'm asking for the total revenue, oops, or maybe it's not going to. I actually can go here and switch real quick to my sales. It's going to show me my sum of sales, but it's also going to display it to me as a map because state is a geospatial dimension. But let's go back. Let's talk more about what are the things that are different about this version of Ask Data. So if I come down to segment, I've always been able to add a synonym. Maybe segment is known as market. And so I'm going to add market as a synonym to segment. But now you can actually go in and see synonyms of the values that are within. And maybe my customer is my B2C, my corporate is my B2B customers, and home office is just home office. Well, you could spend a fair amount of time going through all of these different dimensions and measures, creating all of the different synonyms, either at the field level or at the value level. And that's great. That's great for this data source, but why would you want to do it why would you want to spend a bunch of time if you had other data sources that also use this information? You'd have to do a whole lot of redundant work. Well, now, if I come into my segments, I can actually take this field called segment. And if I know segment is going to be used across multiple different data sources, I can actually publish this data role out. I'm going to publish into my what's new demo. And we can call this my, if I could type, segment slash. And now I can go ahead and publish that. And now that data role that applies to segment is saved. In fact, if I come over here to my what's new, here's my segment role. And it tells you it's a dictionary role, string value. The synonym is market. These are the fields that are addressed. And finally, with Ask Data, is I don't know about you guys, but ever since Ask came out, I've noticed that some of the questions that Ask comes up with don't necessarily always make the most sense. So now we can remove those questions by simply hitting the X, or if we want to add some questions to help people understand how to use Ask a little bit better, we can simply come in and say something like the total profit by market. And what Tableau is going to do is actually get a search by and understand that it wants the sum of profit by segment. And now I can add that to my questions and simply click on it and it'll go run and give me the answer. So imagine the power of, if you know there are several known knowns that folks use this data set for, you could essentially add all of those into your pre-questions just to get their minds flowing and thinking about what are the different types of stuff that they could do. Let's move on to web and mobile. So metrics. If relationships was a fundamentally different way and super important part of this release, metrics is by far second place above anything else other than relationships. With metrics, what you can now do is display KPIs from any dashboard into a centralized location. It's incredibly streamlined to create them. And it works whether you're on the web or on the go in Tableau Mobile. And what you'll see is it's super easy to create and then really, really easy to visualize. So let's go in and create some metrics first. So I'm going to come back to my What's New demo, and I'm going to come into my dashboard, and I want to look at my accessibility and metrics. And what I'd like to do is, for my technology category, I want to make a metric of that. So all I simply do is select the end point, click on metrics, and that's it. It's created. I have my sales technology. You could rename it. You can add a description. You can also change the location of where it's going to get stored. So think about this. You could take all metrics from a bunch of different dashboards and save them into a project that is called CEO metrics or C-suite metrics or senior leadership metrics, and then provide access to those metrics to that group of folks, and they instantly have information that they want at their fingertips. And you'll see how here. But I'm going to go ahead. This metric's created, and my picture is covering up the create button. So I'm going to click create. It's created. I can go to that metric. And now what we can see is very much like a stock ticker, the ability to scroll across and see what the values were. In addition, I can actually see who the owner of it is. I can see what dashboard it's coming from. I can see what project it's coming from, and I can mark it as a favorite. Now that we've done that, I'm actually going to come out to my favorites over here. And another thing that was introduced in 2020.2 is when you're in your favorites pane, what you can now do is, let's say office sales are most important to me. I can click and move office sales to the front of my list. So when I'm in the grid view, metrics look like this. When I go to my list view, metrics look like this. So you just get the numbers. But now let's go and see what metrics look like on mobile. So give me just a second here. And with a little luck, just had to bring it up on the right screen. So now I'm connecting to my phone, and I'm going to go out to my Tableau mobile site. And when it first loads, I can see my favorite screen. I can see my recents. I can see the recommendations, which is another improvement that Tableau has made. But now if I go into my favorites, look at what a clean view this is of what's most important to me. Now I'm using favorites. You could also totally use a different project that just has metrics, but there's even more to metrics than just that. If I select a metric and I come in, I can still, as before, scroll over and see what the numbers are. But what if, and what you can see right now is that the number, what's down by $27,000 or 56% is my December versus November 2019 comparison. These two values. But what if I want to change my comparison? Well, I can actually come and change to say, show me the previous year, and now show that on the screen. And now when I come back, I'm seeing my year-to-year difference from December of 2019 versus December of 2018, and seeing that I'm down 1.5%. To the converse, in the previous month in November, I was up 83%. So pretty powerful what you can do, but so simplistic. And if I want to share that, I simply click my button here, and I can send a text that'll have a link directly to this metric. In addition, if I want to know where this came from, I simply come to my connected view. I can see the connected view. I can also see what project. And if I want to see that further detail, I simply come down and I click, and now I'm actually in the dashboard view that's published on Tableau server that the metric was created from. So pretty awesome. I'm really excited about metrics because I feel like it's going to offer our customers a certain level of simplicity that they've not had before. Hopefully all of you will be super excited as well. Let me come back to my presentation here. The other piece that I failed to show you was that when you turn your screen, the phone orientation also changes as well with the metrics. We have some new authentication for Tableau Mobile. We now support OpenID. In addition, for anybody who is using the Microsoft Intune Enterprise Management Suite, we have a mobile app that will work on Intune. And I already showed you the ability to reorder favorites. One last thing that we've also added is if you're ever on the go and you forgot to publish that workbook and you're showing somebody on server, well, now you can actually choose a TWIB or a TWIBX file from your desktop or from another file location and publish it to Tableau server without having to open up desktop first. Let's talk about Prep Builder for a second and some changes that were made. So what should be of no surprise to anybody on the phone, last year, this little thing happened. this company called Salesforce acquired this company called Tableau. And so what should truly come of no surprise is we're becoming more integrated. One of the first things that was released in 2020.1 was an improved data connector between Salesforce and Tableau Desktop. Well, now that improved connectivity has propagated down into Prep Builder. So now anything that you can find in your Salesforce data, you can now directly connect into Prep. In addition, we've introduced the ability to do incremental data refreshes with Tableau Prep. And let me show you what that looks like. Now, within the Settings tab, you have the ability to just simply check a box to set up an incremental refresh. You choose off of what field that refresh is going to be driven from. You can create an output, and you create an output field. And now when you come over into outputs, you have the ability to choose when somebody creates to do a full refresh, what do you want to happen? Do you want it to create a new table or append to the table? Or if they do an incremental refresh, what would you like to do? Create or append? And both of these choices now, when it's published up to Tableau Server, you can either choose to do a full refresh or an incremental refresh, actually within Tableau Prep Conductor on Tableau Server. So that concludes 2020.2. There's a lot in there. If after this call, if after having 2 hours of Tableau and you're super excited and you want more, right after this call, I get to hang up and I'm joining my healthcare and life sciences team. And we're going to present another set of information, some real world use cases where we'll be leading through change with visual analytics, rapid recovery and resiliency in healthcare and life sciences. So hopefully you guys will be able to join. With that, one last thing, is let your data be single with your relationship. There's no need for trade-offs any longer. Here's some what's new resources. By the way, this whole presentation I will go ahead and share with Alex and Caroline and make sure that all of you have access to it. Thank you very much, everyone.
Excellent, Jeff. Thank you very much. That was really good content. I really appreciate you joining and sharing all that with us. That was well done. At this time, I'd like to remind people that you can put questions in the Q&A and we can answer a couple live here. So if you type anything in right now, we can answer those and then we're going to jump into Jeff Schaefer in a moment. But if anyone has any questions they want to ask right now of Jeff Somerville, we can take a look at those in the Q&A if you want to put anything in. Give people just a minute to do so, and then we'll we'll move on to Jeff Schaefer as well. But I'll give people just another few seconds, see if anyone's had any questions they want to ask at the moment. Otherwise, as Jeff said, we will share the content somehow. We'll figure that out, and look forward to the upcoming releases as well. This is a really great looking release, Jeff.
Awesome. Yeah, just real quick, everyone, I just posted into the chat the link to invite to the webinar that's coming up right after this call at 11 Central.
Nice. Just like you said, if you haven't had enough after 2 hours, here's some more. And not only here's some more right afterwards. Yes. Okay. Well, it looks like people have.
Oh, sorry, Alex. We have one question sent directly to me. Is there a way to avoid clicking through a project folder structure to get to the metrics?
Yes, absolutely. The metrics in the example that I was showing, they're saved directly to my favorites. So certainly somebody could do that by adding metrics themselves to favorites. In addition, a metric is a separate object from the dashboard it was created from. That object can be saved to any location within Tableau server. So it would have to land within a project itself. But let's say you were in nested projects that are deep down in your finance reporting. You can make a project at the root that is called metrics and publish all of your metrics there, and have just a project folder that has nothing except metrics, of which you could then favorite. And when you open up your app, there they all are.
Excellent. Jeff, I wanted to make one more comment before we switch presenters. Just that we are doing the Iron Viz later, or presenting a Viz for the Iron Viz, and that is a competition of sorts. I just wanted to point out that if we were to have a man cave championships, I give you first prize right now. I'm a big fan of your basement.
Thank
It
you.
is awesome.
I can share everybody. There's the ping pong table and some musical instruments and such. So yes, my wife also works from home, and when I took my role at Tableau, I was told that I could have the basement, and I said thank you.
Excellent. Well done, and thank you very much. And we're gonna. Oh, you know what? There was one more question, really quick. We'll let that one sneak in before we move on. From Amelia, it says, which of the new features are on Tableau Public? So the 2020.2 stuff that you were just showing.
I don't know. That's a great question. Like I said, it was just released 2 Wednesdays ago. So we'll go ahead and do some research here, and hopefully before the end of this call, I'll be able to answer you.
I think I've got it very quickly. I can see it on the Tableau Public site. We've got set control and relationships in there, which is pretty exciting.
Excellent. So relationships is there.
Animation is fairly new too, so.
Oh yes, can't forget about that one.
Well, all right. With that, thank you again, and we're going to move on to our next speaker, Jeff Schaefer. Thank you very much for joining us. If you'd like to go ahead and get started whenever you can, we'll have to pass you the ball, perhaps. You already have the ball. Great.
I think I'm good. Except that is not the screen. There we go. It was working. One more time. Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Okay, thank you. All right, well, thank you for having me. My name is Jeff Schaefer. I am the Chief Operating Officer and Vice President of Information Technology and Analytics at a company in Cincinnati, Ohio, in the financial services space. Been doing that for about 24 years now. I'm also the adjunct professor at the University of Cincinnati, where I teach data visualization. Been doing that for almost a decade, 8 years maybe. I'm a 5-time Tableau Zen Master, which I guess means I should know a little bit about Tableau, and co-author of the Big Book of Dashboards. My session today is going to be quick tips and tricks and charts in Tableau, and I'll talk about that in a minute, but I can't go even past my title slide without showing you a tip or trick. So I like using this one. I add a text box to my dashboard, just a random text box, and just put a space in there. And so now I have a blank text box on my dashboard, and what I'll do is I'll go to the layout, and I'm going to make that background of that text box black, and I can size that text box any way I want. So if I want to add a thin border or something on my dashboard, I can add a thin border. Great way to do something like that. Or in this day and age, it might be a little more appropriate to create something like this and say, there's my face mask for today. So easy way to do that. Just as a point of reference, my website is dataplusscience.com. I also have some other websites that I host as resources for you that you should definitely check out. On Data Plus Science, there is a blog button that you can hit, and the blog button will take you to about 200 blog posts that I've written over the years on mostly Tableau, data visualization stuff, all kinds of things, some visualizations and whatnot. In addition to that, you'll see another website called TableauReferenceGuide.com. That is something I curate and host, and you should definitely check it out. It's got 785 curated links of best content from around the Tableau community, and I have it organized by graphing and color and calculations and mapping. And these are not blog posts I've written. It's people from everybody in the community. So if you come in here and you type, hex map, and you want to see the blog posts on hex, here's all the blog posts on hex maps. So all organized for you, searchable, and I add to it a lot. Still building out things like set actions that are fairly new and parameter actions that are fairly new, and starting to build Tableau prep content now and extensions. So adding things along the way, but just another good resource for you. Also would love to show you a website called tabcharts.com. You're welcome to use this, for training or anything, people getting started and you want to learn how to build a various chart in Tableau. You want to build a bullet graph, for example. It walks you through how the pills are laid out on the canvas. It has the data set for what I'm using, and it step by step shows you how to build these various chart types. So it's sort of like a catalog of charts, and I've built all these out. These are sort of modeled after the charts in the Big Book of Dashboards. And last but not least, I've been very active over the years with tips in Tableau. Andy Kriebel and I started this at the Tableau conference way back in 2016, and we had the ever so popular 50 tips in 50 minutes. We followed it up the following year and tried to beat 87 tips. And then we followed it up again, trying to do 50 charts in 50 minutes. So definitely some videos for you to check out. I do have a website called tabtips.com, which has 150 tips using Tableau, all organized for you on different things. And if you're on Twitter, LinkedIn, I have a daily Tableau tip, which just should have set off just about an hour ago. And so I've been doing daily tips on Tableau as well on Twitter and LinkedIn. So definitely check those out as resources, all for you, all free, and have some fun, learn a little bit. So being the guy who loves speed tipping and sort of started that with Andy, I have 30 minutes to show you some Tableau tips and tricks and charts. The first one I'm going to show you is one I use a lot. I have a title slide here from my presentation, tips and charts. And in Tableau, it only lets you go up to font size, I should say only, 72. So you can only bring this text box down to 72. I can go down lower, but the biggest font I can do is 72. And so this font right here that's in there, that's as large as it'll go. One tip, if you want to do larger font and you want to have really big font, go into Word and just make a whatever you want in a Word document. And I'm going to use Railway Thin. And what you're going to see here is that in Word, I'm taking my Railway Thin font all the way up to 120. And what I'm going to do is Control C that, just copy it, bring it back into Tableau in the text box. And when I drop it in the text box, even though it says 72, it dropped it in at 120. I'm also going to Control A it and just center it so it's all centered. But now you'll see I can put a bigger font in Tableau than the 72. And if you're using really big bands that we talk about in the Big Book of Dashboards, you want to have a big number on your dashboard, you want to have a big title, or just big text in general, you can go larger than the default text. Another trick is if you have something like this, Data Plus Science, you can't really put a URL in here. There's no way to link in a text box out to a URL. So you can use that same trick. You can go back into Word. You can create your own. I'm going to do this again. This is Railway Thin here, but I'm just going to copy a link that I put into Word. And when I go back into that text box, if I drop that in here, you'll see it comes in, sort of as a default font. but I can change that. I can make it bigger. And what the nice thing about that is that comes in as a URL action. You'll see when I hover over it, it has a hyperlink built in under the scenes that link out. So you can actually put a hyperlink in text in Tableau. So that might be helpful. You can do that when you want to link to your source of your data at the bottom of your dashboard or something like that. So just FYI. All right, I'm going to build a series of charts for you, maybe some that you've heard of, maybe some that you haven't heard of. To do that, I'm going to start with this base chart. We're going to build this first, and then we're going to modify it and change it and create 3 or 4 other different charts just from this one chart. So this is called a connected dot plot. Some people refer to it as a barbell chart or a dumbbell chart because it looks like a barbell. And it really works great if you're trying to show a gap between something. You have male versus female. The recent Makeover Monday, you had insurance rates that were minimum coverage versus full coverage. And if you're trying to show the gap in between something, this is a great chart to do that. So let's build this real quick. We're going to start, and you'll kind of see the trick as we go along here, but you have dots and you have a line. So to do that, what you need is 2 marks cards over here. You want to be able to create a line and a dot. And so we're going to use a dual access to do that. And I'm just going to use the Superstore data with subcategory. So let's start with this, build this out, and then we'll show you what we can do with it. So I'm going to drag subcategory over to my rows. I am going to take, I think this was sales. Something simple, doesn't really matter what it is, but I'm just going to take sales down here, and I'm going to put sales on my columns. Now, by default, I get a bar chart. Right away, I'm going to change that to a dot. So I'm going to go in here and change that to a dot. The reason I do that is because if I don't change it and force the mark type, then later on it's going to mess things up when I jump into a dual access. So I'm going to just change it to a dot and sort of have my first mark. I'll also kick this an entire view up here just so we fill the screen. All right, now the next thing I need to do is I need to burst this dot out by year. So I have an order date in here, and I just want to show 2 years of data. So I'm going to bring my order date up to filters, and I'm simply going to just filter 2 years. I'm going to take the earliest year in the data and the latest year in the data. You could do the previous year, whatever, but I'm just going to pick 2 of them, filter it down so that I have 2 years of data. So now it's just filtered by those 2 years of data. But I still have 1 dot. It's aggregated, right? It's all one. It's summing sales into 1 dot. So I need to burst that dot into multiple dots. That's easy to do. I could put order date on details, and that would give me 2 dots. I could also put order date on color. Now I could drag it up to the pill, but another little tip or trick is you can click on the little icon right here next to the pill. You can click on that icon, just change it to color. That's an easy one. I've predefined my colors already, so that's why you see a gray color for 2016 and 2017. If you needed to change the color really quickly, you go over to your color legend, double click on your color legend. That's the fastest way to change your color. It brings up your color menu, and you can change your color right here on the fly if you wanted to change one. Easy to do. Another cool trick, if you have a long list in here, you can use your shift key to multi-select, or you can use your control key to select an individual one. So if I use my shift key, I can change them all. So that's a nice little tip or trick, especially if you're dealing with 50 states. You can make them all gray, and then you can make Ohio blue. But in this case, I just want to make that gray. I just want to make that blue. I'm going to hit cancel, and I have my 2 colors. All right, the next thing I need to do is create the line in between those 2. So I'm going to duplicate my pill. In this case, I'm going to use my control key. I'm going to hold my control key down, and I'm just going to go right here on my sales, and I'm just going to, with my control key, I'm going to leapfrog the pill sort of right next to itself, and that's the easiest way to duplicate a pill. When I do that, now I have multiple marks cards over on the left-hand side. You'll see my marks now. I have an all, and I have a sum of sales with 2 circles. I need to do a dual access. I can go up here to the pill, drop it down, and select dual access. Now I have a dual access. If you do a dual access, just make sure that you, especially in a view like this, you will most likely want to synchronize that axis. So make sure you right click on one of your axes and select synchronize axis. So now the axis is synchronized. The last step is to just simply go to the second marks card. I would say it doesn't matter. It kind of does, but I'll show you what I mean. I'm going to pick a marks card. I'm going to pick just the bottom marks card, and I'm going to change it to a line. Now, at this point, my chart's going to go haywire. It's not going to look exactly like I want, because when I look on the line marks, I don't have anything on path to tell Tableau how to draw the line. What are my choices? My choices are really subcategory, I guess, would be one way to do it. And if I took subcategory and put it on path, you'd see that the view doesn't really change. It's just drawing a path between the subcategories. So that's not the right pill. My other choice would be the year of order date. And that's what I want. I want to draw a path between the order date. So I'm going to take my order date and put it on path, and it's going to make another mess. Why? Because I'm already using year on the color. It is now going to aggregate down to the next increment, which is quarter, like hitting the plus sign. In fact, if I used order date again on the detail, it would go down again to month. And if I use order date again on the detail, it's going to go down to day. Every time I use it, it's just going to go down to the next aggregation. So I need to take that and bring it back up to aggregate at year, and that will draw my line from one to the next. Now, in this case, I probably don't want year on color for the line. So in fact, from here, what I simply could have done is just click the icon and change it from color to path, and I would have had my line. Now, when I said the marks card didn't matter, well, it kind of matters because of the what we call the Z order. Our x-axis is the sales. Our y-axis here, the rows, are our subcategory, but we have a z-axis. We have marks that are in front of other marks. And in this case, we have lines that are on top of other lines. Notice that the mark on the bottom of the marks card, the line or at the bottom of the marks card, that is the mark that's on top. If I want to change that, the way that I like to do it, and the easiest way I think to do it, is to just take the first sales pill up here at the top on your columns and leapfrog it over top of the other sales pill, and that will change the order of the marks on the marks card. That leaves your order knowing that the bottom mark is the top and the top is the bottom. And now you'll notice that the dots are on top of your lines. So another thing just to pay attention to is your Z order. That can also make a difference on scatter plots and dot plots. If dots are on top of each other, knowing how your marks are on top of each other in your Z order can be important. So that is how we built our connected dot plot. Now, I could start over to create another chart. What I want to show you is something called a tadpole chart. But instead of doing that, I'm going to go to my connected dot plot, and I'm simply going to duplicate the tab. So here's my duplicated connected dot plot. I'm going to move it over here by the tadpole chart, and I'll just delete this because I'm just going to start with this chart. Now, one simple thing, all I need to do here is to just tell the circles, I have circles here, I have to tell the circle to be larger on one side and smaller on the other side. That is year. So if I take order date, and remember when I put it on there, it's going to go to what? Month. So if I put order date to size, it's going to go to quarter, right? Quarters before month, that's right. And I'm going to change the aggregation of that quarter back up to year. And now I'm sizing based on the year. A small dot for 2016, a large dot for 2019. And in this case, if the dot is small enough on the left-hand side, you're not even going to see it. You can adjust sizing like the trick with the color. Double click on your size legend, and you can make it really, really small on there. You can make it as big as you want over here. And you have what we call a tadpole chart. It's showing the movement from one year to the second year. That's it. Like one change. We put one pill on size, and now we have a tadpole chart. So I'm going to rename this tadpole just in case we send this out. Oh, Now, I've already named a sheet tadpole. I run into anybody that has that problem. I have tadpole over here and I want to name a new sheet tadpole. What do? I'm just going to hit a space bar at the end of it. Now I have two sheets named tadpole. Nobody's going to know the difference. All right, next trick. I want to use open circles on this. How do I get an open circle on my tadpole chart? Well, I'm going to take my tadpole chart over here. Again, I'm just going to duplicate it just so I don't have to rebuild that whole chart. And the trick on this one is instead of duplicating your sales over here up at the top for your circle, we're going to use measure values. And by using measure values, it'll let me put multiple measures on that green pill. Well, before I do that, I need to have multiple sales. So what I did was I took sales over here, I right-clicked on it, and I duplicate it. That will create a copy. And so now I have sales and I have sales copy. Great. All right, easy enough. Now, I could take measure values and drop measure values up on top of sales. That would work. If I do that, I get all of these measures, and that's fine, no problem. I'm going to use my control key or my shift key trick that I showed you. I'm going to click on the top green one, and I'm going to click on this bottom green one with my shift key. It'll highlight all of those green pills, and I can drag them off, and I can drag my year over year off. And now I'm using two values that I want on my sales for measure values. Let me show you something else though, is I have sales up here on my secondary y-axis. I could take sales copy and put it on my secondary y-axis. And what happens? It goes to measure values. Let me do that again. I have sales on my secondary my secondary x-axis up at the top. So sales, the second sales pill that I copied is up here. I'm going to take the copy of my sales pill and drag it up on top of that x-axis and on the secondary x-axis, and it'll automatically create measure values, and it automatically has the two pills that I want down here, and I don't have to worry about them. Okay, that's good, except it also put measure names on my rows. So I'm just going to drag measure names off my rows, and I have the view that I want to have. So this is all good. All right, so what's the last step that I need to do? I need to, in this case, I need to have a white circle on that dot there. And this is where it gets a little complicated because I'm sizing by year. I also want to size by the measure name. I want to make a small white circle and I want to put it on top of that blue circle. So let's do that. All right, well, I'm already using year over here on color. I want to add measure name to my color. So I'm going to take measure name and I'm going to bring it over here to details. If I put it on color, it's going to replace it. So I'm going to put it on details, and I'm going to change the icon. And this is where the magic happens, because when I change this to color, it's going to let me color by measure name and by year. You can actually have two blue pills on color. So this is cool because now I can color by year and I can color by measure name. I'm going to move measure name to the top so that it colors by measure name first and then by year second. Okay, then you'll see over here that I have what? I have sales, I have 2016, dark blue, 2017, and so on. I can double click on this and say, okay, well, 16, I want to make, I don't know, maybe you want to make it blue. That's fine. You can match the dot, or you could make all of them white. So I'm going to click on all three of these with my shift key. I'm going to double click in them and make them white. I missed my control key there. We'll just do it one by one. It's fine. Just double click it, change it to white, and now I have white. All right, so that's good. So now my 19 copy is white. My 16 is white. That little tiny dot is white. And then my other sales is blue. I guess I have the wrong blue. I should have made it the darker blue, but it looks like that. Then the last step is now we have to think about our Z order, your color legend. Your 16 is on top of 19. then that's on top of your white, which is on top of your other white. So you have to understand, again, that Z order. If you want a white dot on top of your blue dot, then your color legend is going to change your Z order. If I move the 2019 white here up in the color, in the order, that's how I'm going to get that. So when we go back and look at the open circles, you'll see that the white sales copy is ahead of the sales copy. All right, well, how do I change it? It's not letting me change it in my color legend. Where's my, here we go. Normally you would drag and move your color legend. You can't move it on your color legend. It has to do with the order of your measure values. If I just simply take my copy and put it on top of my regular sales, that's going to move it up in the Z order. Now my white circle is on top in the Z order above my blue circle. The last thing I need to do is just adjust the size for them. And so if I size, again, based on the same thing, you'll see the size of the circles here. I use shapes, but the size of the circles are now using measure names instead of year, right? So if I do the same thing here, now instead of having year on the size, we're going to use measure names on the size. So put measure names on the size, and you'll now see, hey, look, I got this white tiny circle on top of this blue circle. And if I adjust these, make the white circle bigger, now I have an open circle. You can do that on a scatter plot. You can do that on a bubble chart. You can do that on something else. But that's how we get an open circle at the end of our, it's really two circles, one on top of each other. And I'm using measure names to create those different circles, and I'm using the sales to draw the line. All right, that one took some steps. Let me show you another chart that I think is even cooler for showing something like this, and that's the comment chart. The comment chart, my co-author Andy Cockreeve used it a decade ago to show difference in time. My other co-author Steve Wexler wrote a great blog post on how to do a comment chart. I'm going to go all the way back to my connected dot plot. I'm going to duplicate it, and I'm going to show you how easy this is to do. So here comes a comment chart. What is a comment chart? Well, a comment chart doesn't have dots on it. So I can get rid of that sales pill that has the dots, and then it's sizing the line based on that year. The newer year is the bigger size of the line. So if I take order date, again, it's going to go down to quarter, and I take order date and drag it to size. There we are on quarter. I'm going to click that pill, bring it back up to year, and now I have a comment chart. Super easy to build. In fact, if I were building it from scratch, and I will, just to show you how we did that, we simply put subcategory on our rows. We put sales down here on our columns. We had the order date. Remember, we're filtering to the 2 years. So I put the order date on the filter, double click it. I'm just going to take the first year and the last year, and we change it to line. We need to adjust the path. We need to adjust the size. Order date to path, order date to size, and we just set it both to year, and you have your comment chart. It's really that easy to build. Not a whole lot of steps. If you want to have it a little bigger, you can make your comment chart a little bigger. This is a great way to show, is your sales moving up or is your sales moving down year over year? It could be used for a gap. I think for a gap, if I'm showing male versus female, I'm probably going to go to the connected dot plot. But if I'm showing time and I want to show year to year, I'm probably going to use the comment chart. All right. Let's keep going. A couple more things to show you real quick. One question I had from my students was, actually this was from a workshop I did. How do we color that comment chart? And I want to color it with two distinct colors. I want to go blue up and red down. Well, that is not so easy to do in Tableau. And so that's going to require a calculation to do. And the reason is because of the way Tableau handles its color, and rightfully so. Let's show you what I mean. I'm going to take sales and just put it on detail. And I'm going to make the calculation for sales be a quick calculation that says, I could use difference or I could use percent difference, but let's use percent difference. If it moves up, it's going to be a positive percent. If it moves down, it's going to be a negative percent, right? So I have positive and negative percent. So there's that calculation. I'm going to put it on color, and what do we get? When it moves up, it's sort of dark blue. When it's moving down, it would be orange. But that's not what's happening, because you have to understand the table calculations in Tableau. It's actually calculating that difference, percent difference, going down the table here. So if this dot is growing to this dot, it's going to be blue. And if this dot is declining to this dot, it's going to be orange. So it's actually going down, down, up, and it's going down the table. Well, I'd have to set that compute using and say, you know what, I want to do it on order date. So, okay, on order date. Well, now we get the color that we're expecting. Blue for something moving to the right, orange for something moving to the left. But you'll notice that because of the calculation, it's just using this long version of color. Now, you could force this. You could step it down to 2 colors and say, okay, well, I'm going to do that. But you don't quite get the 2 colors, right? It's moving from blue over here because the percent difference is something over null. This dot is something today, and the previous value is null. This dot is less than the previous dot. So that's why this requires a sort of complex calculation. Now, I'll show you 2 ways to do this. I won't get into the calculation much, but just to show you how we're calculating it. What I did is took that sales. Oh, let me show you this trick. This is a really cool trick. I'm going to create a calculated field. You know that you can drag a pill into your calculated field, and it will give you that complex calculation. I didn't write ZN sum of sales and the lookup -1 and the ABS -1. I dragged that formula. Once I configured the pill the way I wanted it, it's looking up the previous value, right? So that's how I got that. So I'm going to delete that now. Just get rid of that pill and show you once I copied it over. This part I copied from the sales pill that you just saw. I wrapped it in an if null statement to say if it's null, right, true or false, that's going to create a true false statement. That, when I put on color, is going to let me do something a little bit different. So I'm going to 2-step this, and now you'll see the way that I did it. You're just getting 2 distinct colors, one red, one blue, versus the diverging sort of color. All right, one more solution. This one came from Ken Flairledge. I modified it a little bit, but he used the sign function, and he checked the window max of sales minus the previous value. So the max minus the previous value, and then he used this function called sign. That's going to return whether it's positive or negative, basically, right? It's the sign of what it is. And so that creates a wonderful solution for this, because when you put it on color, you get, look at that, you get this binary over here. Same thing, you have to set it compute using, I want to compute using the year, and I get a 1 or a -1. It's a 1 if it's a positive number going up, it's a -1 if it's going down. So I have this beautiful coloring now to create my 2-color comet chart that looks like that. So the calculation, just understanding how to do that calculation, it's not all that complex, but we're just taking the maximum sales in the window, we're minusing the previous value, and we're checking to see whether it's positive or negative. And it creates a 1, -1. You just have to make sure to set that compute using, and you're good to go. I modified his equation slightly. Instead of doing the sign, I just used the inside of the equation. I just did a Windows max, say sum of the sales and the previous sum of sales, and I took the Windows max. So that's another way you can do it, but I like his sign solution. It's really an elegant solution. All right, a couple more fast and furious tips to finish up here as I run to time. I want to show you how to create a custom map without using Mapbox. This is not Mapbox. This is a map in Tableau, just a regular map in Tableau. How did I get it to look like this? So I'm going to create a custom map over here, just with any geographic field. It doesn't really matter which one I use. So I'm going to double click on city. When I double click any geographic field, it puts longitude and latitude on the canvas for me. I'm going to just hit the search bar and go to Cincinnati real quick, Cincinnati, Ohio, and I'm going to zoom in a little. Now, my map doesn't look anything like I want, right? So I'm going to click on map. I'm going to go to map layers. I am going to check streets and highways. I'm going to check, I can't check building footprints because I'm not zoomed in enough. So I'm going to zoom in my map far enough. And once I zoom in far enough, it should, oh, the light map. What do we have here? Well, I don't have building footprints there. Neighborhoods, there it goes. Building footprints came in. So zoomed in. So now I have building footprints checked. If you're not zoomed in far enough, these map layers over here will gray out. And if you zoom in far enough, over here, you'll see building footprints. It's gray right now. If you move in far enough, all of a sudden, give Tableau some time to catch up, I guess. Building footprints, ungrayed, and now I can check the building footprints. So that's how you get building footprints on your new map layers. I'm going to hold my shift key down to pan up a little bit. I want to go into the Clifton area right by the University of Cincinnati, something in here. And give me 1 second here. Let me just center my map up. So there, right about there is the University of Cincinnati. All right. So here is the trick. Once I've added the streets and highways, I've added the building footprints, I've added the neighborhoods and points of interest. The trick here is to take off your base map. You have to uncheck base because that is going to color your map based on a base color. I probably don't need land cover, but it's kind of cool at the university, so I'll show you what that looks like on and off. Now, once you take the base off, here is the trick. You simply format the pane color. You could right click and go to format, or you can go up here to your format pane up top and go to shading. But either way, you want to right click, go to format. And over here on your formatting pane, you have these icons. One of them is shading. Change your pane color to whatever color you want. Now I have a blue map. And when I add in here now down to the buildings, because I added the footprints, and again, I'll go to map layers and I'll add the land cover just to see what that looks like. But now we have a cool looking map built right here in Tableau. If you change the style from light to dark, you get a dark version of that map. So you get dark buildings, but the blue is still blue because the base layer is unchecked. If you check that base layer, it's going to look like that. If you uncheck the base layer and change the pane color, you'll get it to look like this. And even if you zoom out, it's some cool mapping. So you can change it to whatever color you want, and you don't even need to use Mapbox. All right, and the last one, I only have a minute left, but I want to show you something cool with the noodle, the data pane noodle. I want to show you how calculations work with that. So I'm just gonna just run that real quick. I know we're at time, but this is a real quick one. I want to show you how to create a scatter matrix where the top part of the scatter is not there. And so the original looks like this. If you create a scatter matrix in Tableau, it looks like this. And listen, you could go manually and say, I want to annotate the area, and you could put an annotation and use the box trick that I showed you from the very beginning and put a white box over it, right? You could actually white box all of these if you really wanted to, but that's a lot of work and it's not scalable. So how are we going to do that? Well, there's two ways we could do it. In the old method, we would have joined this together. And so let me show you what the join looks like. I have a sheet over here, and the sheet has rows and columns, and I did an inner join with the top 100 Spotify songs. The problem is there's 100 data points in this, and there's a 6x6 grid. So a 6x6 grid is going to create, if I go to the original, a 6x6 grid is going to create 36 points. Joined up with 100 data points is going to do what? Create 3,600 rows in my data. So when I look at this join over here, I'm going to get 3,600 rows of data. Well, let me show you another way to do that. Oh, and by the way, if I click the view data, here's my 3,600 rows. Like there they all are. So it's all duplicated. The same values are duplicated over and over again. If I use the noodle, right? If I use the new data model, I can do the same thing with a relationship. So I can take my 6x6 grid. My 6x6 grid is rows and columns, and I just put a dummy link in here. And then on my Spotify, I have my 100 rows of data. And again, I use a dummy link to create that relationship. If I wanted to join them, I could double click this and actually set up a join, right? If I wanted to do that, but I don't want to do that in this case. So I'm going to leave that relationship. Then when I go into the data, I now have these two data sources that are separate. Now here's where the magic sort of happens in that, because the one data set is up here, I can create a calculation on my grid using my column field. I could also create a calculation on my top 100. So if I create a new calculated field, I want to show you what happens here. If I reference row from my top data source, it's going to be a calculated field that shows up, this calculation 1 up here shows up in my 6x6 grid. If I create a calculated field based on ID from the Spotify data, that's calculation 2, that's going to show down here in my Spotify data. But if I create a calculation between the two of them, let's just say row, that's a number, plus link, that's a number. That'll be a valid calculation. I'm using one field from the grid. I'm using one field from Spotify. It's not going to put that calculation in either data source. It's going to move the calculation down here to the bottom. And so that's what I did to create this scatter row and column. I said, if the column from the first data source is a 1, then use danceability. If it's a 2, then check to see if the row should be null or not. So I basically created these null values where I don't want to show the scatter plot, and that allows me to create this scatter plot matrix. I set up my rows and columns, and then I use that calculated field. I made another field for my labels, but simple here is that all I'm doing now in this calculated field, that if it's energy and it's the first row for danceability, well, then that's going to be null. Otherwise, use energy. So energy is going to populate everywhere else energy needs to populate, but it's going to be null where it shouldn't populate. And so the beauty of this is now when I check my data source, I only have 36 rows of my grid. I only have 100 rows in my data. When I do a sum or whatever, it's going to add up correctly. But now I've created a scatter matrix and I didn't duplicate my data on the top of the scatter. So there's a real world tip or trick for you just to use the data noodle. I think I started 5 minutes late, so I'm 5 minutes over at my time here, but that's what I had to show you. I'm happy to take questions or hang out, but in lieu of time, I will stop there.
Jeff, that was awesome. Thank you very much. Really appreciate the tips. Those are really cool techniques that you've done. Reminder to everyone, the Q&A is where you want to put your questions. So if you'd like to put any in there, we can take a couple live if any come through right now, and if not, then we'll, we can always follow up if some come in later, and that'd be fine as well. Jeff, I'll ask a non-important question, but being a basement musician, I saw you were using the Spotify data source, and I know Jeff Somerville is actually a basement musician. If you look at, you saw it behind him. Have you done any music vids that are out there in Tableau Public?
Well, one interesting one that I did here, I'll share my screen one more time. I competed in the Iron Viz back in 2015, maybe what it was. And the topic was a quantified self. And so, yeah, that was probably the first viz that I did, 6 years ago at this point, that got me on stage at the Iron Viz was actually a quantified self viz on music. And so I had some fun with that one. It's down here a while. I did a couple others. I did women in American orchestras. My trumpet teacher was at the Conservatory of Music, was the first woman trumpet player in a major symphony orchestra. And so to honor her, I did an interview and did that viz on women in orchestras. And then my quantified self, actually had music playing in it. We'll see if this works, but it's an old Flash technique I did in a web page and had music playing. The plugin is blocked. Yeah, probably won't play, but yeah, probably won't let me play, but anyway, it had me playing in here if I unplug it.
Nice.
And I built a trumpet down here with a sand key, one of the first sand keys in Tableau, and showed the music that I played at various places back then. So yeah, that was one music viz that I did.
Very cool. Very cool. Thank you very much. Let's see here. We don't have a question that came through in the QA, just a comment from Patricia that says, so cool. Thanks so much for the great tips. And I would second that. Thanks again. A reminder to everyone, if you've got questions you want to send that you think of later, feel free to send them in through the user group in LinkedIn or to me directly, and I can pass them on if appropriate as well. But thank you very much, Jeff, for your time. We're going to move on to the next session, if that's all right then.
Absolutely.
All right, cool. Thank you. I am going to share just for a moment. I will grab the ball. I think I can grab the ball. I cannot grab the ball. Caroline, can you pass me the ball just for a moment? And then we're going to pass to Kay pretty quickly here. As soon as I can, I am now the presenter. Awesome. Let's see here. Okay, we don't need to see the logo. I am just going here to Iron Viz. So we're doing a Viz session here. So I wanted to pull up a picture to maybe wistfully remind people of the last Iron Viz that we had last year. I know this year everything is virtual, including this meeting, but also TC20. So you can virtually reminisce looking at this picture. This is from my vantage point of the stage where I was sitting. And let's try this for a few seconds. Oh yeah. I took a quick little cell phone video and I thought that was pretty cool looking. Just, it's not a visualization, but it's quite a visual sight to see, right? Anyways, with that, we're going to pass it on to Kay. Kay, who is our Spring Viz champion, right? Excellent. So what we're going to do is we're going to have Kay show off her Viz, demo it, maybe explain a little how she did it, and then perhaps if any of the other panelists, Jeff or Jeff, want to make any comments as well, that'd be great as well after she's done. And let's hand it off to Kay. So Kay, I think you have the ball now, so go ahead.
Yep. I'm assuming everyone can see. Hi, I'm Kay Demanis from the MPD group, and I was hired out of New York, so I've been doing this work from home thing for 8 years. So welcome to my world. Hopefully everybody's got their own space at home. That's the toughest part when kids are home, right? Anyway, let's see. I was going to wear I was going to wear my sequin dress, but that's not fun to sit in for 2 hours. So this is what you get. So I'm really glad that Alex does these things because I do these things for fun anyway, make these dashboards. I am definitely stealing that trumpet. My daughter is a French horn performance major at Western Michigan, so I'll be doing something for her. I like to do things that are interesting to the kids, and I love The Simpsons. That's what's definitely been entertaining me through this whole thing, because they're so ridiculous and funny that they lighten everything up. It's amazing to me. My husband and I are celebrating our 25th wedding anniversary in June, and we have been watching this show for 25 years. So it's definitely stood the test of time. This, unfortunately, is not the best data set, I have to admit. I went to Kaggle and just got a data set. It's about 3 years old, but I could do some stuff with it and at least, produce a little bit of a dashboard. The biggest question is, how do shows basically stand the test of time? And so I did it over the amount of seasons. Oops, there we go. And if you click in, obviously I think the year 97 was probably their highest point. So it filters the rest of my dashboard on what their average IMDb rating was, what the name of the episode is, and who's on there at the most, the Homer and his quotes. Now, I think after seeing both Jeff's presentations, the Jeff with the G first, I have to go back and noodle some more, see what I did there. Because this is several data sets that are linked just with, this is in 2019.4. If I put it in 2020, I think it would be have a better connection, because I did notice that when I click on some things like Lisa Goes Gaga, this is the episode with Lady Gaga, it actually gives me a quote from, I know is a different episode. So there's some linking issues. But anyway, you get the idea. I wanted to make it look like the, I don't know if you see what I did here with the nuclear signs. So that's why I grouped the episodes to show the average IMDb ratings. And then just put a link to my favorite episode of When Homer Works from Home. I don't know if it'll play or not.
We can see it, but I can't hear it.
Yeah, so Employee of the Month is my favorite, but you get the information. You get the idea.
I'm imagining this is what Jeff's basement is like.
Yeah. And
A
yeah,
little bit.
the inspiration for this is, I love this dashboard that this person does. If I can get to it, I'm not sure. Let's see. Because the Simpsons obviously have been known to do predictions, right? Everybody likes to talk about that. And she does a Sankey graph of how, when the episode airs and when the actual event actually happens, right? So she has, yeah, so she has a bunch of stuff in there, which is very, very cool. That's all. That's my dashboard.
Well, excellent. I'll start off with just a couple, just as a non-Zen master, just comments about, a couple of the visual cues you have in there, but having the average IMDb ratings grouped by year, having that as the radioactive kind of coloring scheme, that is, that's a really great idea to do, right? Because it really brings in the flavor of the data behind it, right? I think that's really, really cool. And I love the quotes by character once you actually drill into one, assuming that they're the correct quote. I think that's a really, really cool
Yeah.
idea as well. That's really neat. The Jeffs, if you want to unmute, if you've got any thoughts or comments for Kay, that'd be great.
Sure. So this is Jeff Somerville. First of all, what a fun presentation. I love seeing visualizations about things that aren't business oriented, that offer insights that you just wouldn't think about. It's really cool, that top graph, to be able to see how have the ratings changed over time. And I'm amazed that in 2015, still how highly rated The Simpsons are. The one thing that I might add that could perhaps help things pop out a little bit more was introducing the use of transparency into your visualizations. So these sheets could all have essentially, you make it so that they have no background, so that when you overlay them on top of a picture like you have here, the clouds and the blue would come through. Now, obviously, you'd have to make some design changes in order for the numbers and the graph itself to be able to see. But I know that's a pretty powerful way of making some really cool looking dashboards. I also love the radioactive pie graph. That's awesome.
Thank you.
I would love to jump in. Can I do something different? Can I share my screen?
Please.
Can you stop sharing?
I think I toss you the ball too.
Awesome. Here.
Caroline, can you pass to Jeff Schaefer?
I got it.
Here we go. You got it.
I love. I can't say that I've watched The Simpsons in a long time, but I used to. I mean, they've been on for a long time, and it's Simpsons and South Park are always fun shows. I guess it's just my kind of humor. I was just gonna continue on. I love what you did here. I love the nuclear thing is hilarious. And I love the the analysis side of it. I mean, it's the stuff I'd want to know, like the most watched episodes and the ratings and the screen time and the characters. I mean, you got it all here. To me, it's just little formatting things that I think, just playing off what Jeff just said about, the transparency. I just give you 2 tips or tricks here is, what he was talking about is if you hit the pie chart here, for example, and you hit format, you can change that pane shade, that where I was changing the pane shading on the map, you can change the workbook shading to say none. And, all of a sudden, you got this white box that's just not there anymore, right? So you could have fun with this in a way that that all of a sudden it just, I think it feels better into the design, right? It goes better into that background that you have. And then what you're fighting with when you put worksheets on here, and Tableau just does this automatically. You have a title, you're using a worksheet title, and then you have the worksheet underneath it. There's this space, this gap between them, and your picture is bleeding, from between it. Like the clouds are coming over the blue line. If you move it down here, the clouds aren't coming through the blue background. So wherever you put that, it's going to kind of bleed through depending on the order of what you have. Like the picture over here is kind of bleeding through that. So what you can do to avoid that, if like you really want something in a white box like that, you can do a floating container. So just take a floating vertical container and put it on here, and then put your worksheet with your shift key, put it inside of the container. Then you can control the container color. I double clicked on that tab to make it turn blue. You can turn that container color white, and then that gets rid of that line. You don't have to deal with that line. So if you really want like that white box on here, you now have the white box without anything bleeding through underneath it. And if you want to go the other way, like Jeff was suggesting, and go without a box, you can make it transparent and move there. So then I think you could kind of build this into sort of, maybe just like a mini dashboard in here. You could make it all white and it would look like a white dashboard, or you could make them transparent and build it into the design of the background. But I love the analysis, and I feel like this is all just little design things that I'd probably move around. Like my Simpsons, I'd probably move my Simpsons legend, down a little bit so it's all in the cloud, so that you're not getting the background of it. And then, this one here, you could maybe make this one transparent. This might be a worksheet to make transparent. And then you could move that around. So you could just do some fun stuff with just the design layout with the transparency and the white boxes, I think. And that's really my only comments. Everything else.
Oh, great. Thank you.
Really, really cool on this viz.
Yeah,
Awesome.
really,
Thank you.
really nice job.
I love the dot plot too. I didn't look to see how many dots.
Yeah.
But
There's a lot of episodes.
yeah, I mean that's
And
really
it's still
cool.
going, so.
That that might be another thing you could add is like just big numbers at the top, like how many dots are there? Like I
Right.
saw
Overall.
this, I was like, wow, I wonder how many episodes they have, right?
Mhm.
And so it looks like
I think there's around 600.
yeah, 589. So I mean that could be something else you could do. You could put a big number at the top, 589 episodes, and something like that. But I really like this. Cool stuff.
Thank you.
The other thing I just noticed there, because I was wondering about how much screen time groundskeeper Willie got, but then as I noticed the screen time is not sorted in descending order. I would probably do that.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Just because that to me makes more sense. Unless you wanted to highlight maybe the family if they weren't in the top, but they are generally anyway.
Yeah,
Mrs.
yeah.
Ellen has more time than Lisa Simpson, which is odd.
Yeah, like I said, some of the things in the state, I was like,
It's interesting. Yeah.
I know the show. But like, as I said, it could have been the way that it's joined, right? And that's why, because there's some that have IDs of characters, and there's also episode IDs. So if you don't match up with the right ID, right, with the episode, then you're not going to get the right character speaking for that episode.
Yep.
Anyway,
that's really cool.
Only as good as your data engineer, right?
Well, having a Zen master here to kind of tweak it doesn't hurt either, right?
That always helps, yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
I just couldn't resist downloading and playing with it. It's cool. So great job.
Yeah, very cool. Well, Caroline, if you could pass back to me momentarily.
Let's see. I gotta
Where am I?
stop this. There we go.
All right, I'm gonna share one more time. So I'm going back here and just wanted to highlight that we did a Iron Viz last meeting in January or February. That was our Q1 meeting. This is our Q2 meeting. We did another one. And of course, given we were doing an Iron Viz, there is a prize. And this quarter's prize is a set of Sony Bluetooth noise canceling headset. So, a very nice little thing. Just wanted to remind people that, while tchotchkes and prizes shouldn't alone inspire you, it doesn't hurt, I suppose, either. But that'll be being shipped out to Kay. Should be on its way at some point here pretty soon. And a couple more things. Wanted to thank everyone for coming. I will check the chat again for any questions in a moment. But just wanted to thank everyone for coming. And we hope to see you again at our next meeting, of course. Our next meeting, let's see, this is Q2, would be in Q3. Normally we would plan that for essentially the middle of the quarter. So that would be August. We'll kind of see when exactly that ends up being. August meeting, probably still virtual. And then we'll see beyond that, right? We'll see what happens in the fall and how everyone's feeling and if we've hit our second wave and things have gotten worse or better or what. But in any case, we will definitely meet one way or another, either virtually or not. Just another wistful thought to remind you, we won't see you in person at TC20, but maybe TC21. So I put a couple pictures up here from TC19. Actually, this one's just a little video from their party. You can kind of see a little of that. It's kind of funny, but it's a lot of fun to go to those and a ton. I've told my bosses this many times, and I hope they, in spite of these pictures, I hope they believe it. I mean, I really do pack the days with sessions. I think they're incredibly useful. We'll see how the TC20 goes with it being virtual, but certainly these conferences, I think, have a ton of really good information to be had. Go see the Tableau doctors like Jeff Somerville or whoever else. And, the Iron Viz competition is a really, really cool thing to see. And just about everything else here. If you can see, one of the things that people sometimes get embarrassed by is pictures of themselves, and I should be embarrassed, but you might find one on this slide of myself in the data pool, very buried in the data pool.
Yeah, and I'll just add on. This is Jeff Somerville. That we are still having a TC 2020. It is all virtual, but I know that the Tableau marketing team and the team that does the organization is hard at work to still make it something that's going to be worth the while for everybody to come attend. And it might be something that a lot of people can attend simply because it should be far more affordable.
Yes. Well, anyways, let me get back to the. Let's see the meeting chat. Hold on. I'm going to stop sharing for a moment, and then I'm going to go check the comments here and the Q&A. All right. Can we get a recording? Right. Someone said they lost connection midway and missed about 10 minutes of tips from Jeff. Caroline, do you want to answer that? How that's going to work? So I know that we're recording.
Yeah, sure. So actually, this is a good tip for everyone. All virtual user groups actually live on the Tableau YouTube account. So if you're ever curious to even see this session or any other sessions around the world, I recommend you go there and have a look. It just sits under Tableau, YouTube, virtual Tableau user groups.
Excellent. I will also put a post out once this is posted on that site, the recording. I'll put a post out on our LinkedIn as well, just to remind people of that link, Caroline, so people have another way to be reminded of where to get to that information. So thank you for your help. We don't have any more questions in the Q&A that I'm seeing. So I think we're good with the questions at the moment. Again, if you have any follow-up questions you want to hit us with later at some point, let me go back. I'll go back in here and go right up here, right? North Suburban Chicago Tableau User Group. You can find us on LinkedIn under that name. The community, tableau.com, also user groups at tableau.com. You know, plenty of ways to find us. Myself, you can find me under my name on LinkedIn. There's my work email address as well. My personal one's on the LinkedIn as well. So you can reach out to me directly if you want as well. The other thing I will add is for the next meeting or any future meeting, if anyone ever wants to present or show off a tip, you know, it doesn't have to be 45 minutes, right? If you have a 10-minute tip you want to show off or a visit you did that you think is cool, we'd love to get people involved, as many people as want to, right? It's more fun, I think, when we see what people are working on. So, you know, it's really great to, one, do the little viz challenges and the iron vizzes, but also just to see what people are working on, just even without a, you know, a competition tied to it. So anyone who wants to present or share anything at the next meeting, please let me know. And, you know, we'd love to have you. With that, I'd like to one more time thank Caroline for helping to monitor, and then Jeff Somerville and Jeff Schaefer for presenting, and Kay for your awesome donut themed Simpsons viz here. That was awesome. And, or I should say radioactive Simpsons viz, right?
But donut would have been great. I needed donut charts on there. You're right.
Normally those are supposed to be a bad thing, but for Simpsons,
Not
right?
for Simpsons.
It's very appropriate. But thank you everyone for attending and for all our presenters. And thank you, and we'll see you again soon.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.